The deployment and subsequent withdrawal of National Guard troops from Los Angeles highlights a complex issue regarding the use of military forces in domestic civil matters. The initial deployment of thousands of troops was a federal response to protests and civil unrest, which arose in response to immigration enforcement actions by the Trump administration. This federal intervention was met with significant opposition from state and local leaders, including the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles. They argued that the federal government's actions were an overreach, that the presence of armed military personnel was unnecessary, and that it was more likely to escalate tensions rather than de-escalate them. They maintained that local law enforcement was capable of handling the situation. The recall of the troops signals a de-escalation of the situation and a return of authority to local governance. This process has involved a gradual reduction of the military presence as conditions on the ground were assessed to be stable. The event brings to the forefront debates about federal versus state authority, the appropriate use of military resources in civilian contexts, and the role of the National Guard in domestic affairs. It also underscores the political friction that can arise when a presidential administration and state governments are in conflict over public safety and civil liberties. The recent deployment and subsequent recall of National Guard troops in Los Angeles was a direct result of escalating tensions surrounding federal immigration enforcement. The initial cause was a series of Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) raids conducted by the Trump administration. These raids, which targeted individuals suspected of being in the country illegally, sparked widespread protests in Los Angeles and other cities. The federal government, under the Trump administration, viewed these protests as civil unrest and lawlessness. Citing concerns for the safety of federal personnel and property, the Pentagon ordered the deployment of thousands of National Guard troops and even Marines to the city. This move was done over the explicit objections of California's governor and Los Angeles' mayor, who argued that local law enforcement could handle the situation and that the presence of military personnel would only inflame tensions. The recall of the troops is a sign of de-escalation, but it also reflects the political conflict between the state and federal governments. The Trump administration's decision to federalize the National Guard without state consent was seen by many as an overreach of presidential power. The recall of the troops, therefore, is not just a tactical decision, but a political one, signaling a phased return of authority to the state and local leaders who had opposed the deployment from the beginning. The deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles for immigration enforcement and its subsequent withdrawal had several significant results. Politically, the situation created a major conflict between the Trump administration and California state leaders. Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass openly criticized the federal action, framing it as an unnecessary overreach and an abuse of presidential power. Newsom went so far as to sue the federal government, arguing the deployment was unlawful. This legal and political battle highlighted a deep-seated federal-state authority conflict. Economically, the presence of troops and the heightened immigration enforcement created a chilling effect on the state's economy. Reports from California officials and economic forecasts indicated a decrease in private sector work, as well as a significant drop in state tax revenue due to fear among immigrant communities. The deployment also diverted National Guard members from other duties, such as drug interdiction, leading to a reported decrease in the seizure of illegal narcotics. Socially, the military presence, according to local officials, inflamed tensions rather than de-escalating them. The sight of armed troops on city streets, particularly in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, caused fear and anxiety within the community. The situation also raised broader concerns among military veterans and legal experts about the politicization of the military and the use of armed forces in domestic law enforcement. The political and legal fallout from the National Guard deployment in Los Angeles suggests a few possible predictions for the future. We will likely see continued and perhaps more frequent clashes between the federal government and state leaders over the use of the military in domestic affairs. This event sets a precedent where a president can federalize the National Guard over the objections of a governor, raising questions about the balance of power. Future presidents from either party may be more willing to use this tool to enforce federal policy or respond to civil unrest, especially if they are in conflict with state leadership. This issue could also lead to renewed calls for legislative reform regarding the Insurrection Act and the Posse Comitatus Act. Lawmakers may seek to clarify the president's authority to deploy federal troops within the country to prevent future disputes. The legal challenges raised by California's governor may pave the way for court decisions that define the limits of federal power in these situations. Finally, the incident could further politicize the military in the eyes of the public. If the National Guard is increasingly seen as a tool for a specific political agenda, rather than a neutral force for disaster relief and domestic security, public trust in the institution could decline. This could also have a negative impact on military readiness and recruitment, as potential service members and their families may become wary of deployments that they perceive as politically motivated.